Today we'll be talking about what we learned from both the Americas and Pacific's kickoff tournament. We'll cover their stats, top teams, under and over performers in each region. I already did something like this for EMEA and Pacific, so you can check it out later if you want. They got some really exciting stats and storylines over there too. When it comes to looking at each region, I can say that they've been taking a different approach to the balance changes made in the offseason. Like the Americas, who are number one when it comes to abandoning the Sentinel class as a whole. Basically, Cypher and KJ have the lowest pick rates here versus every other region. Cypher is at 38%, which is the smallest number among all four regions, but not by much. What is really crazy is to see KJ at 25%. They practically left KJ to go get milk from the gas station and probably won't be back anytime soon. We know that Loud may have a slight effect on these stats due to them making it further, and SADX's thoughts on the class as a whole.
We're not playing with Sentinels, which is super good. I hate Sentinels, by the way. Not the thing. Yes.
Just to be clear.
Yes.
Sentinel agents are overrated.
Oh my god. If I had like 4 of these, I would use it for sure, yeah. Information. And you don't need to play with a Sentinel to have the info you need to finish the round, you know?
Yep.
This is in stark contrast to the Pacific, where they use the likes of KJ and Jet the most, out of all 4 regions. I wanted to add Jet here too because these agents kind of reflected last year's meta. KJ was the most chosen character in Champions, while Jet was the #1 duelist pick in Masters Tokyo. Based on this, you could say Pacific teams are lagging a bit behind when it comes to embracing the changes that Riot put in place, right? Well, part of this is based on the maps being played. For example, Jet is played a lot on Ascent. EMEA's kickoff tournament only had 3 games played on that map, while APAC had 8 and Americas had 9. The same Americas where Loud's 7 flash comp has an influence on these Ascent numbers. However, for EMEA, we didn't see a single team play Jet on Split, while Pacific has a 50% pick rate for this Korean duelist. This is because double dive is still a thing here. There is still some innovations going on, like Paper X playing double dive with a flash duelist too, and they're unbeaten with it. I don't know how well something like that will hold up in Madrid though. But hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm not going to be the one to tell a team to change something that's working for them, even though it does have its flaws. Having a backup plan if or when it does go south isn't a bad idea though. But for now, let's talk about the top 4 teams in each region. In the Americas, you kind of have to say it's currently Loud and Sentinels because they actually qualify for Madrid. The battle of the top 3 for Shanghai is probably them with Leviathan and NRG. I do want to throw 100 Thieves and Evil Geniuses in this bucket too for a number of reasons. First off, Loud and Sentinels had the most time together during the offseason than the other organizations I mentioned. Leviathan is next, even though they brought in Calm kinda late. However, these teams did not have that much time together. A lot of them formed a month and some change before kickoffs even started. EG, for an extreme example, announced their team on the 26th of January, and kickoff for them started on the 24th of February. Less than a month, and they did better than what most people would think. They were probably practicing before then, but I think you still get the point that this team didn't really have that much time together. Then you have 100 Thieves who were able to take a map off against everyone that they faced in the group of death. They could have beaten Leviathan in a very close icebox match. If you give these teams a little bit more time, just imagine the damage they can do. You might include G2 as well if they can fix their bad habits of giving away huge leads. The 4th spot for champs is truly wide open in my opinion. I made a whole video on how I feel about it and why each America's team still has a shot at it. Feel free to check it out if you want. Now for Pacific, Gen G and Paper X earned their spot in this discussion, especially Gen G. They had a similar road as Sentinels where they faced the region's best team last year and then went on to beat all of the top teams in the play-ins and playoffs. If you say Sentinels are the best team in the Americas, then you kind of have to say the same for Gen G too in Pacific. They practically went through their region's gauntlet the same. And as someone who likes to root for Paper X, I had a lot of copium that they weren't trying in the grand finals of kickoff, but that would take away from Gen G. They are a solid team and earned their 3 championship points. So until proven otherwise, they are Pacific's new kings. For the rest, I would add Team Secret, T1, and DRX to the top 4. It's early and things can change. Team Secret kind of pushed Gen G the furthest out of any other team so far when this Korean team started their win streak. T1, DRX, and Team Secret have yet to play each other, so I kinda expect a fun matchup when it does happen. I had a feeling that DRX would take a step back as a top 2 team in Pacific, but I could see them climbing their way back up with the more games they play together on LAN. Losing games early in these events could be a blessing and a curse because you could end up getting more reps, which is needed for a new team that's formed together. Ask Sentinel, K-Corp, and Gen G if it helped them. They got better despite losing the group stages and now are seen as the best in their region. Of course, you risk the chance of getting booted out early too. When it comes to overperformers, I would say that MIBR and EG did their thing during these stages. Yes, EG only won one series, but as I mentioned earlier, they had the least amount of time among any team to prepare. They beat G2 thanks to anti-stratting, same for Loud on Ascent, something that even Leviathan and Sentinels weren't able to do. I also mentioned in my unhinged guide to Americas that MIBR had a chance to beat Furia, and they did, even though I did have Furia winning in my pick'ems. It was the only thing that I got wrong during the group stages of Americas, which kind of ruined the rest of Group A for me. However, claiming a series win over G2 was not on my bingo card at all. Same with C9. They could have also swept G2 during the play-ins matchup. I think as a whole, for the people who slept on MIBR, we kind of have to just tip our hats to them. We weren't familiar with your game. I guess if you're a fan of this team, you might not be surprised, but I think a lot of other people are. In Pacific, I wasn't too big on Gen G coming into kickoffs either, and I personally thought everyone else was fighting for that second place spot. They proved me and everyone else wrong by leapfrogging them and claiming that crown for APAC. They're the only ones who really overperformed, in my opinion, in Pacific, because most of the other teams that I had rated high either performed pretty well, performed to my expectations, or below. So that leaves us with underperformers, which G2 has to be a part of, right? A lot of people had them actually winning their group. I didn't. I picked Evil Geniuses, but even I knew that was a little bit of an upset for all the reasons I mentioned beforehand, with like just the time together the team had was just significantly less, right? Maybe you could blame the format of play-ins where the third team who has to compete is the least warmed up. Then they got anti-stratted to death by Evil Geniuses, right? Those are some excuses you could make. Before play-ins, I wanted to point to their defense for why they kept falling short, and then they played against Sentinels on Sunset and couldn't win a single round on the offensive end. So I have to just throw that excuse out the window too, you know? G2 has shown us that they can be a top 4 team in Americas, but these choking allegations aren't helping them. Then there's also C9, who had one of the easier groups to qualify for and couldn't get the job done. Oxy has displayed great skill, and we can say he's not the main issue here. Both these teams are making roster moves already, which doesn't instill the greatest confidence in me for their Shanghai hopes, but it could work towards their Champions 2024 aspirations. And now for Bleed. I wasn't expecting them to have one of the worst records among the Ascension teams, especially since the group that they were in wasn't that difficult in my opinion. However, they only won a singular map during kickoffs. They did kind of get the short end of the stick with map 1 of their first game taking 7 hours to finish, and then Ye had some health issues against Global Esports. You could say unlucky, but Bleed as a whole kind of fumbled the bag against Global Esports. They could have played them on Bind, the same Bind where they keep running solo Viper, which should be an easy thing for other teams to handle. But for the moment, I also have to include Zeta Division as underperformers too, which kind of sucks. I like this team, and so many people were asking them to make changes to the roster. And when they finally did, they get absolutely destroyed in play-ins. They almost got 13-0'd on Icebox. We see that Bleed is already making some roster changes, and Zeta may as well. I'm rooting for both of them to do a lot better during Split 1 and onwards. After looking at each team's region, I can say that Americas and EMEA as a whole have transformed the most with their tactics and team comps. Even though China and APAC compared to those other regions haven't embraced the changes as much, PaperX still is leading the charge and shocking the world with Asian picks that no one saw coming. Fun Plus Phoenix is also cooking up some interesting ideas too. Overall, I can say each region has their own tactics and playstyles that differ from one another, with outlier teams in all of them. These style differences will be something I pay attention to in Masters Madrid because it could very well tell us how the future of the meta will be, where you have teams like Gen G being a little bit more standard with their comps and approach to the game versus a team like, let's say, Loud, who are completely left field to everything, and they've been trendsetters before too, so only time will tell. But you guys let me know down below how you guys felt about kickoff. Is there anything you would change to the format of these games? And which kind of style of play do you think will remain dominant throughout this season?